Welcome to the Naturally Prosperous Woman podcast. I'm your host, Tara Preston, founder of the Akashic Women's School, mentor to new paradigm leaders for over a decade, and teacher of divine prosperity consciousness. This podcast is dedicated to empowering women leaders around the world who desire to tap into their authentic feminine power for more money, magnetism, and, of course, impact. It's a platform for women leaders wanting to embrace their natural abilities to create, lead, and flow, unlocking their inherent potential for prosperity and living in alignment with their truest selves. Because it's your birthright to flourish in the naturalness of the woman you were born to be. Thanks so much for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Prosperous Woman podcast. I'm your host, Tara Preston. Today, we are talking about how to love yourself prosperous. And I'm specifically speaking about how this ties into the energetics of money. I've been making my full-time living from my purpose for 13 years. And there was a significant time on my path where I really dove into the energetics of prosperity, of money, and what that meant to me on my path. It came at a time where I had done a significant amount of work on myself, and I still really wasn't seeing the flow of prosperity that I desired personally. So I started to really deepen into why that was. I ended up hiring an energetics and money coach at that time. And it became a key piece. It became a key piece in how easy I let money flow to me. It became a piece in how my relationship with money shifted and changed. From one where I often felt like it was hard and I had to chase it, to one where I could partner with money and have it show up in a space of ease according to my desires, my intentions, my vision for my life, and have it feel like a stable, supportive partner rather than something that I constantly felt let down by. So after I had, done the deep work and invested and spent a good year or two really diving into the energetics of money, I ended up and felt called to teach around money. And I did that for 2 or 3 years, really supporting women to unearth their deeper desires and to partner with money so that they could experience a new level of freedom. So if we're on our purposeful path, we are essentially saying yes to our divinity, to the expression of more of our divinity, to the experience of more of our divinity. And there are so many women, and I think that to a degree I did too feel like this, but where we feel limited to live the fullness of our purpose because of money, right? And so if you're listening to this, chances are you're here for a reason. So how often or where do we limit ourselves, right? When it comes to money, like, not trusting money to be there or feeling like we don't have enough resources in order to take the step forward that we feel ready to take, right? Where we feel limited or where we feel to a degree just abandoned by money, right? That can happen. And then we end up feeling, stuck, trapped, isolated, and we don't get to move forward into the fullness of our purpose and be desire-led women, right? And that's an important part of this path, is that we can be desire-led. We can allow the voice of our soul, the desires of our soul to lead and have money meet us in that place. But so often we come up against that wall of, well, I want this, I see this for myself, but we don't actually allow ourselves to have it because we feel we don't feel supported by money. So noticing where you maybe feel trapped, limited, isolated, abandoned by money, right? That can happen. And if you're feeling like that, I'm just sending you love and witnessing that it's not a fun place to be. And there's medicine in that place too. there's medicine in that place, because ultimately we are meant to experience freedom. We are powerful creators. We have the limitless capacity and creative power of our soul, right? And it's actually more powerful. That aspect of us is more powerful than the limitations of this physical experience. But what often happens is that we let our physical experience or lack of resources in our physical experience dictate how we get to move forward into more of our natural prosperity, into more of our desires, into more of the vision of the woman that we were born to be, into more of the vision that we're being called to be. So this isn't about taking risks or making silly moves. It's fair to want to use a fair degree of logic. And also, there is a lot of creative power when we say yes, when we claim our sacred desires, and when we actually take the first step, even when we feel limited, trapped, isolated, stuck, abandoned, right? We go first. There's a lot of people out there who talk about polarity consciousness. I am definitely a teacher of unity consciousness. I feel like, there's so much of it out there the last 4 or 5 years. This is unity consciousness in terms of the inner masculine and feminine templates, something I've been talking about for a long time. And so what happens when we're in that place of having our desires, but not claiming them, not showing up powerfully for them, not taking the steps forward, is that our feminine feels disempowered. And the masculine reflection is where we are working out of the wounded masculine aspect. We don't feel supported by money, right? In order to elevate our sense of purpose and prosperity in the world. So that's the medicine in that space right there. It's like, why do you, right, feel limited, trapped, stuck, isolated, abandoned? And so we can sometimes follow the threads of like that in terms of our experience with the masculine. This can be ancestral. It can be generational, the relationship that we had with our father, right? And so it lends itself to sometimes some of these collapsed or more wounded aspects of the masculine. It can actually swing the other way too, in terms of the masculine. Maybe we have more of the wounded aspect of like the control, dominator, suppressor, masculine wounded aspect, right? And so even when the feminine desire aspect wants to lead and has a higher vision for more prosperity, for more nourishment, for more freedom, the wounded aspect of the controller, dominator, suppressor suffocates the feminine. So it can feel like things are being really suppressed. There's a different word that wanted to come through and I just lost it, but I think you know where I'm going with it. So just starting to feel into, in this sense of like feeling limited, trapped, stuck, abandoned, right? It can often play into the experiences that we've witnessed our mothers have, right? It may be in the relationship that she had with her father, or maybe in her relationship with money. And if you know my story, when I started to deepen into the energetics of money, that became a key piece for really understanding why I was reaching this plateau in my relationship to money when it came to living my purpose and living my desires. And the first initiation or the first step for me in healing and really reclaiming my power, was healing and reclaiming my power. I really had to recognize that I was a powerful woman. Right? I had to recognize that I was a powerful woman, that I had the capacity to create life on my terms, that it was safe for me to show up powerfully, that it was important for me to have my needs, my wants, my desires, my vision, right? And then I was going to claim that, and I was going to take a stand for that, and I was going to start to take steps, no matter how small or how big. I was going to go first because the vision that I had mattered. The desires that I had mattered. The needs that I had mattered. the desires that I had mattered, right? That's soul speak. That is the essence of our creative desire speaking to us and through us. It is meant for us. This is exactly how God is speaking through us, right? So God wants to elevate the expression of our prosperity and our purpose in the world. God wants to protect. God wants to provide. God wants to support, right? And so as we start to come into this exalted sense of power, of purpose, of prosperity that is natural and is inherent to the truth of who we are as women, what we start to do is unshackle ourselves from the lower level aspects of the masculine and feminine, right? We start to remember and reclaim the God-given right that we have to experience prosperity as a result to showing up more fully in our power as women. This power piece for women is so incredibly important. And if it's an edge that you push up against, there is a podcast that I hosted, and it was called, it was all on power, money, and wealth, power, and beauty. So those are often like the three edges that women will push up against when it comes to their visibility, right? But this power piece is so big, and this can play out, even in terms of like asking to be paid well in the world for your sacred work, to be paid, really well, like the $2, $3, $5, $15,000 for your sacred transformation, right? The work that you are ultimately here to do in service, right? That really weaves and brings all of you into the scope of your unique transformation. It's your mastery. And so there's oftentimes this like stepping into the edge of our power. This can show up in showing up in our power in relationship dynamics and showing up in our power with our spouses, right? With our siblings, with maybe your father. So there's many different layers to it. And so it's worth sitting with, right? Because this is where we step into our creative power. This is where we take up space with the beauty and the truth of who we are. Right? We're not waiting for permission anymore. We are claiming what we want, and we're taking up space with it. We're going to show up for it. And, here's the other thing. If we want money to show up for us, then how do we need to show up for money? Right? That is such an important question. And it's another way of actually starting to look at the relationship dynamic that we very often have with the masculine. But we flip the script a little bit by looking at the reflection of money in our experience, right? If we want money to show up, how do we need to show up for money, right? And so sometimes that, the piece that's jumping out for me is faith, is trust, right? Trust that we can show up in our power, that we can claim our desires, that we can take the steps that might be right in front of us, even though they're scary, even though we're inching our way into the edge of the unknown. But we start to develop a very trusting, loving, faith-led relationship with God, right? God, the higher sacred masculine that can hold us, right? And if we have a calling, if we have a desire for our life, and this is not just like, buy a car or like a new wardrobe, although, that can be an energetic layer of our desires and how the soul wants to express itself in the physical. But if we have a desire to just live our purpose, to make money through the vehicle of our business as the expression of our purpose, right? If we have a desire to untangle ourselves from the matrix so that we can live in harmony and with the rhythms of Mother Earth, right? So that we can nourish ourselves, so that we can honor ourselves, so that we can live from a space of vitality, so that we can start to nurture the next generation from a space of deeper presence, right? This is desire-led. This is God-led, right? This is the beauty that you are here to experience. So why would that be withheld? Why would the resources for that be withheld? And, this is coming into that space of again, remembering that we are powerful creators, right? That we are powerful co-creators, that we dance with our desires and the divine, right? And that we're not limited. And if we feel limited, we need to be able to look to the edge of where we are allowing ourselves to stay in that space of safety, right? Inside our comfort zone. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with safety, right? Unless it's safety due to resistance, right? Like safety due to trauma. And so this brings me to the next piece of digging deep into this money piece. Right. So there was this, looking at like who I was as a powerful woman, really examining my relationship with money, really examining my relationship with the divine. I remember at that time too, just like really kind of like a fear of taking a deeper, being really all in on my purpose, even in my business. And in the back of my mind, I was like, well, what if I don't do it? What if I'm not provided for? And I remember really holding on because in the back of my mind, I was like, kind of like leaning into the support of my husband. Right? Like trusting that more than like trusting my ability to create abundance, and at that time too, it was putting pressure on my relationship with my husband because he was really, desiring for me to start to see that next level of income in my business. And it did come and it was beautiful. And it became a really beautiful dance for both of us. I really started to come into a new space of power and leadership and prosperity. And it actually started to generate overflow in my business and in my life. And it took pressure off of him. And then what happened is that as it took pressure off of him, he actually could start to pull back and really start to feel into the expression of his purpose. And then he was actually able to untangle himself. At that time, he was working full time, and working hard. And then over time, as I really started to get anchored in my own prosperity and in my own business, it created more freedom and less pressure for him to really examine where his purpose was and what his vision was, and where he could start to align himself that way too, so that we could both really step into the purpose of our work and experience prosperity, so that, we could thrive, so that we can be vital, so that we can be way showers for our daughter. So this piece of safety, right? This is another piece, and it's another thread into the root system, into the foundation of who we are. And it stems back to oftentimes the inner child, right? And so the inner child became a very deep piece for me that I worked with for a year or two. And I came from a lot of like survival trauma and patterns from my childhood, being the daughter of a single mother who struggled, who worked very, very hard, but things were tight. And I had a very absent father who experienced homelessness. And so my inner child, my inner little girl, was carrying all sorts of baggage from that experience with both parents, right? The pain and trauma that I saw my mother carry, right? And just the memories of what it meant to struggle, or what it meant to see my mother struggle, right? And we carry that in our system. We carry that in our cellular memory. And being the oldest daughter at that time, I often, my mother was busy working and she was busy tending to me and my sister as best as she could. And so I very often, had desires, had wants, had needs that sometimes went unmet, right? And sometimes I didn't feel fully seen in the support that I needed by my mother. And it's no fault of hers, because she was in survival, right? Single mothers in our society don't necessarily receive a lot of support. And so I was also the oldest daughter. And for some reason, my mom always felt like I was strong enough to handle whatever I needed to handle. Right. But I often didn't feel that way as a child. And so when it came to new experiences, even as a child, it was often very difficult for me. And I remember I would shut down, and I remember feeling just very like numb from the experience. So there's lots of memories, lots of imprints, lots of trauma from childhood that gets so deeply ingrained, but mostly for me at that time, it was just not feeling supported or held in the way that I needed to when it came to taking steps, right? To shine in the beauty of who I was as a child, to pursue the gifts that I wanted to pursue, or to show up in different experiences. I remember just even with sports, right? Really having to try to figure that out on my own, but often not really taking the steps that I needed to take because I didn't feel that sense of encouragement or support from the mother. And to be honest, the absence from the father, right? And so some of those pieces really carried out in my experience of prosperity, in my experience of being able to show up in my power, in my experience of being able to take steps towards what I really wanted, and how held and seen and witnessed and supported I was able to allow myself to feel, right? And so one of the key pieces, and even this is such an important piece just in terms of authentic feminine leadership. Like the inner child piece is such an important piece because she holds the key to why we're putting the brakes on, why we're so scared, right? Why we're clinging to the safety of our comfort zone. And so many women will like push and push and push and push, and they don't realize that they're not really getting the traction that they need because the inner child is so hurting and she needs the love and the support, right? She becomes a really powerful part of our leadership as women, right? Like, what does she need? How does she need to be cared for and held as we take the steps to bring our higher vision, right? As we say yes to a higher vision of prosperity, as we take the steps that we know that we need to meet money in the place that we know we need to meet it. So the inner child piece becomes such a beautiful part of healing our relationship to ourselves, of understanding how to create a deeper sense of safety within ourselves and our experience and our environment as we say yes to changing our lives in the way that we know we need to change them. The inner child is also a very, very valuable piece to understanding our needs, right? Our emotional needs. And so it's the more that we can listen to the inner child, the more that we can really give her a voice, the more that we start to tend to our nervous system, right? The more that we start to tend to our inner foundation, our relationship with ourselves, the more we start to tend to our nourishment. There's a softness that starts to happen, right? We start to build capacity through new ways of being. We start to show up differently. And really what we're doing is this is what I call motherline repatterning. But we're developing a new relationship with ourselves by mothering ourselves, right? And we do that. And when we mother ourselves through the layers of change that feel uncomfortable and scary, right? And as we do that, we start to shift our vibration. We start to build a new sense of well-being. We start to support ourselves in the way that we never had. When we start to listen to our needs, there's something really beautiful there that happens because needs could be listening to the fact that you need more water during the day. It could be that you need more time to just connect in, to just draw or paint or play. Or maybe the need is, there's a sense of sadness or frustration or anger that needs to be honored, right? And the inner child gives us all of those clues. And she also really shows us the self-care often that we have neglected to give ourselves, right? So again, it really starts to shift our experience of ourselves and how we nurture ourselves so that we can shift our vibration. And through that process, we start to move forward in a way where there's less resistance, right? In a way where we can start to open up to what it is that we're calling in for ourselves. And that could be money, could be opportunities, or just allowing the vision of our lives that we have to start to arrive at a much higher, to start to arrive, to actually just allow it in, right? Because there's a softening of our system. Our inner child feels very safe and very loved by the way that we get to mother ourselves and by the new relationship that we have with the divine. And as we start to really integrate all those elements, our experience of prosperity begins to shift. We start to feel free to a degree in how we get to create and lead our lives forward as sacred, powerful women, right? Women who are always held by the divine. So I've shared with you a lot of pieces. And at this point, I'd really love to just invite you to really sit with what sparked you today for today's podcast, right? What sparked you? Like what was your biggest insight, your biggest takeaway, right? Maybe it was mothering yourself. Maybe it was the inner child piece. Maybe it's deepening into your relationship with the divine, right? The holy templates of the sacred masculine, right? And how the masculine truly wants to hold you, protect you, support you, right? As you say yes to your deeper desires, right? Maybe it's more that you're feeling that sense of you don't feel safe to take the steps. And again, coming back to that connection with the inner child, really. And it really is a matter of putting your hands over your heart, closing your eyes, and just asking for your inner child to have a presence inside of you or in your mind's eye, and just noticing what comes forward. And what is she needing from you at this time, right? Or maybe it's more of the piece around the relationship with money, right? If we want money to show up for us, how do we need to show up for money, right? Really, money is so attracted to our power. So it might be a power piece for you. There's so many layers to this relationship to money and this experience of new paradigm feminine prosperity. This is something I've been teaching on for a long time. If you would love to go deeper with everything that I'm sharing with you today, you can. There's a couple different ways. And actually, the one thing that's getting my attention right now is the Akashic Money Queen Masterclass. The Akashic Money Queen Masterclass. So if you're catching this podcast up, that masterclass is usually $197 USD. But if you're catching this podcast and this is speaking to you, and we go through in a very beautiful way, the workbook is beautiful, the masterclass is beautiful, you work with your own Akashic record, we work with the masculine templates, the feminine templates, the inner child. We really start to look at shifting and opening up to a new relationship to money. And by the way, women have had such beautiful breakthroughs from this masterclass alone. Here's the thing. I'm going to offer it for 47 USD on this podcast. So if you're listening, you're catching this all the way to the end, and this is speaking to you, email Tara@tarapreston.com. So there's a little juicy nugget for you if this is speaking to you. Now, if you'd love to go deep into this and you know this is a piece for you that you're ready to dive into, ask me about my 6-week money, magnetism, and impact 6-week Akashic journey. 3 45-minute Akashic sessions, and then in between Voxer, access to my vault of trainings. We can move and shift a lot in 6 weeks. If you are being called into your new paradigm feminine leadership, prosperity, if you're feeling the call of a new vision bubble up, if you know that you're really ready to heal a lot of your old family of origin trauma, right? If you're ready to really go deep into the energetics of money, of leadership, in order to hold a new vision for your life, right? If you're ready to really experience rebirth, anchoring into a new paradigm of feminine prosperity, message me about my 9-moon soul initiation called Feminine Phoenix Rising. This is a private opportunity to work with me. It comes with all kinds of beautiful bonuses, almost like full access to my vault of incredible trainings. So it's a deep dive immersion, and this is a very, very deep healing container. It will change the trajectory of your life. You can email Tara@tarapreston.com to ask me about that. Also, right now, my foundation body of work, the Flower of Life Akashic certification. Lots of women take this for their own healing journey. Many will certify and take this work out into the world. This is the foundation of all of these teachings. You can access that this month, is on sale. We decided to do a month-long sale. So it's on at 50% off, $777 USD. If that speaks to you, the link will be down in the show notes. And otherwise, thank you so much for listening. I think that that's all that I have for you today. I hope something in here inspired you to deepen into an aspect of this, to take a step, right? Or to bring healing and love to some part of yourself, to shift your experience of prosperity and money for the new paradigm. Have a beautiful day. Talk to you soon.